Hey guys, Digital Lifestyle here, back with another video. I'm a little bit miffed by this BBC new Verify um, channel that they've now decided that they're going to put out. I'm going to say this straight up, right? We have lost faith in all media. It doesn't matter which one it is, especially the old style media, whether it be BBC, Sky News, Fox News, CNN, all of those organizations. I call them organizations because they do not give facts. Now they want to start giving us facts. Now they want to start giving us more bullshit and more lies. I don't know why, and I really have said this before, why people are paying. And for those of you who do not know, in the UK you have to pay to watch the BBC. You have to pay to watch the BBC, whether it be news or any of their channels. You have to pay for that shit. Yeah, and all they do is lie to you. Fair enough, people like Coronation Street, well, I don't even know those kind, but all those kind of soaps. And guess what? Soap. Think about it. Soap just washes away. Look, bullshit media. I am sick and tired of these entities, these organizations still trying to think they can pull the wool over my eyes in particular, because I don't fall for that bullshit. I don't watch any of those channels. I don't pay for that, and I will not pay to be lied to. Wake the fuck up, people. Stop being dumb. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. There will be a clip in the coming on. Right. We have stablecoin regulations coming out. Massive. Will that dethrone Tether? I have no idea. We've got Klaus Schwab warning again. Well, not warning again, he's been saying it. Pay sufficient attention to the global cyber attack, which could be worse. We have banks possibly going under. I believe the IMF has put out a warning about bank runs, I believe it's called. And we have well, we're going to a cashless society at the end of the day. Anyway, do watch to the end. There's quite a few clips in there that you guys are going to want to watch, especially with stablecoin regulations and how they want to work with that and how they want to peg it 1-to-1. My only issue is if the US could continue to print money, then you're going to run out of stablecoins that are not printed. So you'll have to either print more stablecoins in order to keep up with the amount of money that the US keeps printing, or unless they back it 1-to-1 with the amount of money that they have in the system now and never print any more money. But I don't know how that's going to work out, right? Anyway, Digital Lifestyle out. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day, and please, don't fall for this bullshit. Yeah, don't fall for the media anymore. People are getting caught up in this crap, right, and believing every single damn word that these people say, and getting frightened or getting control. No, wake the fuck up. Anyway, Digital Lifestyle out. Watch to the end. Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Take care of yourselves. Here's the article here with more work is needed to make banks more resolvable. Last year, turmoil showed that further progress is required in a number of areas to ensure banks aren't too big to fail. But they are. They aren't too big to fail, or they should be failing because they're poor services. We're moving into a cashless society, as I said, and Bank of America wants that. Almost a year ago, Credit Suisse, a globally systemic bank with 540 billion in assets and the second largest Swiss lender, founded in 1856, failed and was sold to UBS in the United States. Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, and First Republic failed around the same time amid Federal Reserve interest rate hikes to contain inflation, where they combined 440 billion of assets. These were the second and third and fourth biggest resolutions since the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation (FDIC) was created during the Great Depression. The banking turmoil is represented the most significant test since the global financial crisis of ending too big to fail, whereby a systemic bank can be resolved while preserving financial stability and protecting the taxpayers. Never have protected taxpayers. Come on. Now, moving on. Bank of America wants cashless society, says CEO. Earlier this week, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, I think, spoke about the implementation of digital payments transactions as society progresses towards becoming cashless. During Fortune's Brainstorm Finance Conference in New York on Wednesday, the tech chief officer spoke about the growing popularity of digital mobile payment transactions, mentioning Zelle, Google Pay, and Apple Pay. In particular, Moynihan said the Bank of America will continue to move towards digital banking transactions. We want a cashless society, said Moynihan, speaking to Fortune's Sean Tully. We have more to gain than anybody from a pure operating cost perspective. He noted that the Bank of America currently spends $5 billion for checks and cash to move around the company. Although the CEO did not disregard the importance of having physical branch locations, he pointed out that many of the deposits are not made at banks' branches. On the other hand, between now and tomorrow, at the same time, 800,000 people will walk into the branch, Moynihan said. It's a high-tech business, but you need both to be successful. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, please do like and subscribe. Watch the video to the end. Some doozies in there. Take care of yourself.
Welcome to BBC Verify. Like you said, we are a team of investigative journalists here at the BBC. We are also a new brand, and we are a physical location above the newsroom in London. And the point of the team, as you said, is to verify video, to fact check, to counter disinformation, and to analyse really complex stories so we can get to the truth of what's going on. Why does this matter? Well, mistruths can cause really serious harm to society and to the people in them. And so we want to show you our workings and really help you understand how we get to the bottom of what's happening. And I'm going to give you a bit of a flavour of the kind of work that the team are doing. So we're able to look at maps to geolocate specific situations, stuff that's going on. This is just a map of central London where we are now. And this is New Broadcasting House, where I'm speaking to you from. And it's not so important perhaps for the centre of London, but it is when we're analysing war zones or what's happening in hard to reach places. And there's a story on the BBC website today. It's looking at Russian fortifications on the front lines in Ukraine, and you can read more about it there. And there are other ways that we also are able to interrogate what's going on, including on social media. I have some undercover accounts that I've set up for the BBC's Americast podcast, and we use these kinds of undercover accounts. These are the characters that the accounts belong to be able to really understand polarisation online and how what's happening on our social media feeds and what we're being recommended and pushed to us can affect all of us. And they don't offer us a totally exhaustive insight into what's going on, but they can help us understand just how social media works. And then there's also investigating other mistruths and the real world harm they can cause. At the moment, I'm investigating the UK's conspiracy theory movement. I'm trying to understand more about how it's evolved and intensified since the pandemic here in the UK. I'm looking at the alternative media that finds itself at the heart of this movement, and a conspiracy theory newspaper that's a part of that as well. I'm looking at the way that alternative media is funded. I'm looking at its impact on local communities. I'm looking at its connections with far-right figures and also its foreign links. That's for a podcast series that will be coming out in June. It's called Mariana in Conspiracy Land, and it will be available on BBC Sounds, Radio 4, asking that question, could January the 6th or a German coup attempt like we saw there ever happen here in the UK? So there's a real range of journalism BBC Verify will be doing, and you'll be able to see it online, on iPlayer, across BBC News, on your televisions and radio, so do look out for it.
Pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack.
But this is the first time I've ever heard that there's a need to condemn and say, yes, but of course there's suffering, but first we need to condemn. Are we out of our minds? Condemning the resistance of the people who are being oppressed and killed, subjected to genocide for 75 years? Are we out of our minds? Are we out of our minds? Are we outside of our minds when we let this ridiculous narrative take hold and spread and then participate in it, nodding our heads like sheep? Oh, and by the way, yes, there is a genocide going on and it's terrible. But first we have to condemn the Palestinians who dare to stand up. Palestinians who have shown an ability to sacrifice and amounts of courage that, as far as I can remember, are unprecedented, facing this horrific, horrific oppression. But what are we really talking about? Again, we've heard lists and lists and lists of crimes committed by the State of Israel, lists and lists of crimes against humanity. And there's always seems to me like there's a little bit of a sense of surprise, a little bit of shock, a little bit as though this was somehow not predictable. What we are seeing now in Gaza was not only predictable, it was preventable. And we did not prevent it. The previous massacre in Gaza was predictable too, and that was not prevented. And we can go on and on and on and on back 75 years, because what could possibly be expected from an apartheid regime established after a massive campaign, open massive campaign of ethnic cleansing, massacres, and the beginning of a genocide that is still going on today? What could possibly be expected? That was the founding moment of the State of Israel. Close to 1 million people forced out of their land. God knows how many were massacred. And that was the beginning. That was 1948. So now we're shocked. All these lists and lists and lists and lists, there's nothing new about them. Except this time the numbers are higher. This time the numbers are, even by Israeli standards, it is shocking. But this was predictable and this was preventable. And every time something happens, we rise, we protest, we demand, and we forget. Instead of standing there and demanding an end, an absolute end to the oppression and the killing of Palestinians, an end to it. Not a ceasefire to it, an end to it, a political solution that will guarantee the lives, the security, the safety of Palestinians. That has never been discussed. I don't recall it ever being discussed, that guarantees need to be put in place. Guarantees need to be put in place for the life and security and the safety of Palestinians, because Palestinians have been living in a state of terror for 75 years. Not just now, but for 75 years living in a state of terror, whether they're in the West Bank, whether they're in the Gaza Strip, whether they're citizens of the State of Israel or so-called citizens. They've been living in a state of terror, and they still do today. Granted, the level of terror has increased since October the 7th.
New bipartisan bill swirling now aimed at a regulatory framework for stablecoins that would protect consumers. And we have the perfect guest to talk about this, Republican Senator from Wyoming, Cynthia Lummis, alongside Yahoo Finance's Jennifer Schonberger. Jennifer, I'll toss things on over to you.
Thanks so much, Brad. That's right. Senators Cynthia Lummis and Kirsten Gillibrand rolling out brand new legislation to regulate stablecoins. Senator Lummis joins me now. Senator, always great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to see you, Jen. And by the way, that was a fabulous little primer on stablecoins. Well done.
Well, thank you. And building on that, how does this new bill protect consumers, especially when it comes to runs on stablecoins, akin to the one we saw when Circle, the largest U.S. stablecoin issuer, ended up breaking the buck when we learned that billions of its reserves were tied up in the failure of Silicon Valley Bank?
Well, our bill requires 100% hard currency backed stablecoins. We don't allow algorithmic stablecoins. And we require that stable coins in the United States, pursuant to our bill, be 100% asset backed. Now, that could be hard currency like US dollars. It could also be US treasuries or other assets that are commonly recognized in the fiat world and very much pegged to the US dollar.
What happens, Senator, if a stablecoin issuer fails? Will holders of that stablecoin be made whole, just like depositors in a bank when a bank fails?
Well, the short answer is yes, and the way that the legislation tries to provide for that is multiple. One is if the issuer is a bank, again, they have to be 100% hard asset backed. It's not like a fractional reserve like normal banking assets. Then if it's issued by a non-bank, a trust company, the trust company would have to have a separate custodian to make sure that the stablecoin backing is not on the balance sheet of other for use for other purposes. So it's definitely sequestered in a way that would protect the users. And then in the event of a failure of a company, we are incorporating the FDIC receivership and conservatorship language and incorporating it into the stablecoin world. So if there's an insolvency, there's a process to protect the holders of the assets.
So, given that banks and non-banks can issue stablecoins under this legislation, curious how this legislation would deal with PayPal and its issuance of a stablecoin, and whether a retailer like Walmart or Meta who may want to rebroach issuing a stablecoin, how that would work under your legislation if that's possible.
Well, the issuers could be a bank or a non-bank trust company. So I'm assuming that if it is one of the entities that you just mentioned, that they would go the non-bank trust company route, that they would have to use a custodian that is sort of subcontracted for this purpose. Or if they're doing other business, which all of the entities that you named are, they would have to have their stablecoin business walled off from their non-stablecoin activities. So we think we're providing enough flexibility to innovate in this space in the United States and also providing consumer protections. Our goal is to find that sweet spot, to make sure that we are innovating, and not only innovating, but leading in the United States in this space. We don't want to see our failure to legislate and have a clear rules of the road for Americans. We want to make sure that this industry is robust, strong, innovative, and very present within the United States. We don't want companies to have to go to Europe or elsewhere to find a clear regulatory framework that they can use. There are safeguards such as if a U.S. issuer issues and knowingly fails to comply, there are fines. And there are abilities to issue from the existing dual banking system. The states and the federal government will both have opportunities here. There are different regulatory mechanisms if you're under a $10 billion business versus over a $10 billion business. States would be more able to regulate in an under $10 billion stablecoin business. So we've tried to provide enough flexibility with regard to the choices of entities, whether bank or non-bank, whether state or federal, to people issuing stablecoins, but still allowing them to innovate. So if you had a PayPal, which is clearly larger than 10 billion, there's a regulatory framework for them to use that would be different from, say, a startup.
What's your plan to get this bill into law, Senator? Or will it go as an individual bill through committee, or do you think it could be attached to some sort of larger must-pass legislation? And what are the odds, do you think, that this bill could actually pass? Is there enough support in the Senate? Are you working with members of the House that have their own version of a stablecoin bill?
Senator Gillibrand and I are working with members of the House, particularly Patrick McHenry and Maxine Waters, the chairman and ranking minority member, respectively, of the House Financial Services Committee. We have entertained a variety of vehicles that this might be attached to. So we're working with Senate leaders to see if there is a preferred vehicle that the stablecoin bill could ride along with. We do believe that the stablecoin component of the regulatory framework that Senator Gillibrand and I have laid out for all digital assets, including digital assets that are commodities like Bitcoin, digital assets that are securities and would be regulated by the SEC, non-fungible tokens, CDBCs. We've created this regulatory framework for each of those contemplated digital assets. The one that seemed to rise to the top in 2024 as having the most legs to get across the finish line this year is the stablecoins component. So we pulled it out of the larger Lummis-Gillibrand bill. We put in the language of the FDIC insolvency provisions to add that added layer of protection to make sure that if there is a conservatorship or a receivership, that we're using procedures that already exist and with which banks are familiar to have that kind of an insolvency protection. And we are ready and able to work with McHenry and Waters and anyone else who's interested. Now that our bill's been filed, it's also out there for the stablecoin industry to look at and comment on and get back to us so we can make sure that it's had adequate vetting before it moves forward. We're looking forward to marrying our bill with a House version and then see whether the House has the political heft to move it forward or whether the Senate moving it first is the preferred option. So as you can see, procedurally, we're looking at all available avenues to try to get a stablecoin bill across the finish line in 2024.
All right, well, Senator, please keep us.
Over time, your money gets you less. Does Bitcoin? Well, in 2012, one Bitcoin bought you this much pizza. In 2016, this much pizza. In 2020, this much pizza. And in 2024, well, you get the gist. Roughly every 4 years, the future supply of Bitcoin is reduced. So historically, you get more, not less.
So what is money and how does it get value? Paper money has value because someone says so. Bitcoin is different. It's like digital gold. It has value for many of the reasons gold does, but that's only the start. Gold originally had value because it was scarce, but no one knows how much is left to dig up. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has a limited supply, 21 million, and it can never be counterfeited. Every day, more people are buying it, making it more scarce, making it more valuable. But you can also split it up because every Bitcoin is divisible by a lot. Each Bitcoin can be split into 100 million smaller units. So if one Bitcoin was worth $1 million, the smallest unit, called a Satoshi, would be worth 1 penny. So you can send whatever amount you want, and no one can stop you, because no central authority controls it. So unlike with banks and credit card companies, you don't need approval to use it, and no one can decide to just print more or shut it down. It puts the power back in all our hands. Bitcoin lets you control your finances. Kraken lets you buy Bitcoin. Kraken, see what crypto can be.